I remember sitting in this little cafe with my partner at the time, and I was like, if this is what I dreamed of, I don't want to dream anymore.
Quickly though, before this episode starts, I've got a 10-second favour that I'd like to ask you. The majority of people watching this podcast haven't yet hit the follow button. I can't tell you how much it helps. The show gets bigger, which means we can increase our production and also allows us to bring in some of the best guests that you want to see while allowing us to continue to do the thing that we love. Thank you so much for your time. Jackie.
Go.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
How are we doing today?
Good. I'm good. Really good.
That's good. When was the last time you've done a podcast?
I feel like it was early last year I did a podcast.
And how did it go?
I feel like it worked pretty well.
Okay.
I was actually thinking about it on my walk today about the last podcast, and I remembered that one and I was like, yeah, I think that really flowed really well. I was really proud of that one.
That's good. That's good. Well, we'll see how this one goes.
Awesome.
What's your guess from the first interaction with me today?
I think we'll be fine.
I love it. Well, let's get stuck into it. So if you could give an elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, and how you're contributing to the world, what would that sound like?
Okay. You said you weren't going to ask me the questions directly. Okay, who am I? Currently I'm the co-founder of Humming Puppy Yoga Studios, which I founded, let's say, I think it was like 8.5 years ago, almost 9 years ago.
For the listeners, where do you have studios?
So we have studios in Melbourne, in Paran, in Sydney, which is in Redfern, and one in New York City, in the Flatiron district. And then we have a smaller studio which is in Montvale, New Jersey.
Why New Jersey?
It's actually sort of a slightly different business model. It's under the brand of Job Fitness.
Okay.
So it's kind of, if you just kind of think about it like a smaller franchise, that we outsourced, we train the staff, they take care of the rest of it. And then we also have like an on-demand platform. So technically there's 5 studios, if you like, or 5 separate businesses.
Where do you film the on-demand stuff?
Currently the on-demand stuff gets filmed at our Sydney studio only, just because of equipment and sound and stuff like that.
So you're well-versed in this world, kind of.
I used to be.
Okay.
We when the pandemic hit, we set up our on-demand platform in 5 days.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I learned a fair bit, but I also had a fair bit of help.
Yeah,
you know.
That's all right. We can't get anywhere by ourselves. You got to stand on the
never.
shoulders of giants sometimes, and
never.
it's all good. Yeah. So continue on. You're saying, you know, what you do. You've got this yoga studio, group of yoga studios, and
yeah. So we've got this group of yoga studios. So that's kind of primarily where I spend my days. But I am actually stepping away from the business at the end of this month and just moving into an advisory role within the business. And I'm completely stepping into an unknown space. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm so excited about it.
I love that.
So I'm really I'm so excited to just have some space, some downtime, and just a chance and an opportunity just to think about like what's next, but without feeling any pressure, not feeling any fear about the unknown as well, which is really nice. Just stepping into some space and curiosity.
So you're just into the chaos of what could be from here.
Yeah. And not even, I don't think chaos is the right word. It's like, it doesn't feel chaotic. It actually feels really easeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Even though it's been a really big decision to make.
Yeah. Well, we can dig into that later on.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And what do you like to? So how do you see yourself contributing to the world through what your experience with the yoga studios and potentially where you're going from here?
Well, I guess obviously through yoga, it's creating a space for people to just disconnect, to reconnect. And as far as where I'm stepping into now, I think what I enjoy doing is holding space for people. So it's just now sort of imagining like how it is that I'm going to hold space for people. Similar to what I've been doing in Humming Puppy, because, you know, it's like bringing people into a studio, you're holding space for them while they're with you. So, yeah, it's just like, okay, well, what does that look like, and how do I best serve through the work that I do is the question that I've got at the top of my list.
You don't have an answer for that?
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
I have a few ideas.
What ideas?
I'm not sure I'm ready to like publicly announce them.
Okay.
I've shared them with a few people, and I must admit there have been those ideas where you're like, this is the thing, this is the clarity. So it's kind of like a little sidestep to, you know, what I've been doing within the yoga studios, but different.
So how have you gone about finding the clarity for what is sounding like a pretty big transition?
How do I go about finding that? I really had to create space for myself to get the clarity.
Okay.
And I would say that is through a lot of the practices that I do.
Which are?
Meditation, which we spoke about before.
Yeah.
Meditation, journaling, therapy.
It's all the good shit.
Like talk therapy, somatic work, ancestral healing, psychedelics. Gosh, what else? Like acupuncture, chiropractic.
You're just in it all.
In it all. Which has been really great because there's actually, you know, through the pandemic there was space to get into it all. And I know it was hard for a lot of people. It was hard for me as well, but it was like –
I had a great time.
honestly, like I look back on that and I'm like, can I swear?
So
like,
whatever.
In so many ways, like thank fuck for that time.
I think you just swore. I'm going to have to start again. No, I can see.
Because it was just like, it was really life-changing for me, those 2-3 years, to actually have that space, to not be in the work of running the businesses all the time, in it 24/7, 7 days a week. So all the practices combined with space and then a realization that it's creating that space that gets me to the next place, that gives me that clarity. It's been a really big, what would you call it, like a really big understanding for me.
Is that something you didn't have before, that understanding you didn't have beforehand?
No.
Okay.
I didn't know what space was because I just filled the space.
It's interesting given that you're in the health and wellness space, which is all about creating space, and there was no space.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Where do you think that came from? What caused that?
What caused? How far do we go back?
Well, actually, let's start. What are the contexts of your early years that allows us to understand you as a human?
Well,
let's start there.
All right, wait a minute. Okay, because this is really fresh in my mind. One thing, like if we're talking about where does it come from, is I would say that my parents taught me how to work hard.
Okay. Are your parents like from Australia? What's the background?
So my mother is of Thai heritage and my father is Australian Irish heritage. So watching them grow up, they taught me how to work hard, which I now realise is like to my own detriment. Because being busy is often worn as like a badge of honour.
That's sick.
And I just don't believe or buy into that anymore. And so I think that's just kind of something that I took through my whole life up until, let's say, the pandemic hit, where there was like forced space. But yeah, that's where that came from. It's like just fill the space, say yes to everything, do as much as you can, work as hard as you can, because that's just what you're built for. It's what you're good at. You can do it. Your constitution is made for it.
I think the saying yes to everything is really important at the early stages, but at some point you get overwhelmed with opportunity, and then you have to learn a new skill, which is how to say no.
Yeah.
So I think this pathway is definitely, I think we all go through the exact same pathway of you got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to just kick up dust and see where it goes.
Yeah. And I can do that, but I just, at this point in my life, I'm choosing not to.
Yeah.
I think I can achieve more from not hustling.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
I don't think I just don't think that hustling is necessary. Like, I think going slower there is so much value in going slow.
Actually, I'm going to go have a quick nap. We'll come back into it.
Napping in the afternoon is like my favorite thing. I don't need a nap today. But yeah, it's having that space, and because the thing is, like, when you're so busy, you can't actually stop to think about what you're doing. Like, the element of being present disappears. And so you stop listening, you stop hearing, which is the same thing, but you stop being present because you're like, okay, well, what's the next thing? What's the next thing I've got to achieve? What's the next thing I've got to tick off my list? And you're just like going. And by the end, you get to the end of the day, you're so tired, you just want to zone out on Netflix.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go a little bit slower, it's like you can actually be present in your conversations, in, like what in nature, like just that sense of presence, I think, is lacking when you're in hustle mode.
Do you think that you need to get there's a omnipresent financial fear that a lot of people have that I think is the first hurdle you need to get over, and to get over that hurdle you do need to hustle. But once you've got, say, that first buffer in the bank or something, or things are slowly moving, then you can take the foot off the pedal a little bit. It's hard for a lot of people from my experience as well. When you're stressed financially, it's like, it's very tough to be present because you feel like your survival's in question. So I think, the hustle works well to begin with, and then it is detrimental. Yeah. Well, I feel like once you start steering a bigger ship, better decisions, like it's slower, you're better off making better decisions, but less of them, and maybe a little bit slower than the wrong decision. Just like, we're going to do this, and it's just all over the place. And
100%. And I see and feel all of that because we just went hard and fast, in building the business, and to our detriment.
Really?
Like, emotionally, physically, financially.
Really?
Because we just thought we could do it all.
So what you're telling me is you can't do it all?
I don't want to do it all.
Huh.
I just have no desire to as well. It's like, what did I do this for? I remember, maybe this is jumping around a bit, but I remember there was one moment in New York. I was living there. We just built and opened the studio. I remember sitting in this little cafe with my partner at the time, and I was like, if this is what I dreamed of, I don't want to dream anymore, because I was so burnt out. I was emotionally drained. I just could barely even function.
Finish the sentence.
It was like, I'm just a robot right now, and I'm not enjoying any of it, and it's hard.
It is hard. Some things are really, really hard. Yeah. New York is an interesting one, so maybe we can talk about what made it so difficult.
What made it so difficult? Many things. I'll try and list them out. Firstly, you're living in a culture where everyone speaks English, but you don't understand the language.
What do you mean by that?
Don't you find that in New York? It's like being in another world.
What do you mean?
You all speak English, but it's like, I just remember for so long I had to like take about 3 seconds to compute what people were saying to me. It's just a different language. Anyway, there's tiny little things like
Interesting.
that.
I've not experienced that at all.
Oh, wow.
I've just
Maybe
there's
that's
a bit
why
of
you're born
slang.
to be there.
Yeah, I've always thought that I was telling my friend today that I swear I should have been in the US. All my interests are just very American.
Yeah, interesting. So there was that for me. New York is a really difficult city to build and do business in.
Really?
It's the most at the time, it was the most expensive city in the world to build in.
Right. Just on contracting basis?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Very different mentality to building in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, tradespeople in the US aren't really put on as much of a pedestal as they are here. People love tradies in Australia, but in America it's not.
That's because they do a good job.
Really? They do a good job here?
They do a phenomenal job in comparison to building our studios here to the US. In the US, the carpenter was the cleaner, was the painter, was the tiler, was basically everyone. Yeah, wow. Everything, and so the quality of work is just shit.
So there's...
That you pay a premium. So there was that. There then was also just being away from my community, like my family and my friends.
How long were you away for?
I lived there it was about 9 months straight while we confirmed our building contract, started the build, recruited all our staff, trained our staff, opened the studio, taught there for a while and came back. Okay. And, I was talking about this to someone the other day. I realized like 6 months of winter. And so I think that played a role as well in like, this sucks.
Yeah, for sure.
And
seasonal depression.
Yeah, because I moved in October and then moved back the following July. Yeah. So it was really tough to be away from family and friends, and the communication from the US to Australia is so bad. Tough. So at the end of the day, when I'm trying to just wind down and switch off and just forget whatever happened.
Everyone's bombarding you.
Everyone's on and they're like, okay, I saw your email from this morning and la, 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 la. And it's like.
You'd be out for dinner and then you just your phone gets blown up.
Oh, it was just like, stop it. And then the same thing in the morning. Yeah. Like I'd wake up and they're all going to bed and they're like end of their day. Right, okay, so I've done this. And so you just like, I was just never off.
Yeah. I understand that.
Never off. And I don't know, I felt like the city is like incredible. Like it's amazing. There's something really special about it. But there's also the other side to that is that it's chaos. I feel like sometimes I felt like I could die in my apartment and literally no one would know.
No one would know.
No one would care. They wouldn't even smell me, for like weeks because it stinks so anyway. Bad. It was like, but it like kept pushing me. So it's like you sink or swim. You either meet it or you drown in it.
I think that's what, from my experience with New York, is it either brings you in or spits you out. Yeah. There's no middle ground.
No.
You either hate it or you're obsessed.
Yeah. And it's like you're on all the time. As soon as you step out the door, it's like you're fighting for your place on the pavement.
Yeah,
and then you don't stop until you shut that door, and then it's like the sirens and the heat and the cold.
I love it. It makes you tough.
It does. Like it really toughens you up.
Makes you very tough.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, it's probably worth getting a bit of a history of what Humming Puppy is and how it began, why it began.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of have to go back a few steps, I think. And maybe I'll just like frame it around my career. So I had a career, like I worked in the hospitality industry, had a restaurant for a short period of time.
How was that?
That was equally tough as well. Like
pick the industry.
I think hospitality though, it makes or breaks you. And I always think whenever staff or like new hires come in, if they've had hospitality, I'm like, I want you.
Yeah. You get
Because
it.
dealing with the public, being able to multitask, there's skills that you don't learn unless you've been thrown in the deep end in hospitality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having the restaurant was great from a social perspective, and it was fun when you're working in flow with the right people. It was shit when you're not. I learned a lot from that experience. And then I ended up in the dental industry.
Okay.
So I worked my way up. I started off as an orthodontic nurse. Then I worked my way up to managing that practice. So I managed dental practices for about 10 years. So this is where the yoga comes in. So within that time of being in the dental industry, I then sort of fell into meditation and yoga. Mainly because I had a knee reconstruction that I didn't manage well. So I wanted to just regain some strength and flexibility, and also just some calmness and mindfulness in a relationship that wasn't amazing. Okay. So I ended up, it kind of took a while for me to get into yoga. But once I was in, I was in. I was all in, and maybe not the right word to use, but slightly addicted.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. It's the endorphins that you get when you don't have it and then you start getting into it. It's really powerful. It is very powerful.
Really powerful. So, I just I would practice with my teacher twice a week, and then from just remembering what she taught me, I would practice on my own every morning at 5 a.m. And then that is where I noticed real internal change happen. I started to I don't want to say I disengaged from my life, but I sort of became the observer of my life.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, which was really interesting. And then from there, that helped me make the decision to get out of that relationship. And then through my work in the dental industry and working with the dentists that I worked with, who were really lovely, I started to notice how passionate they were about what they did. And so through all of that,
you weren't passionate about teeth?
No. I liked and enjoyed the work, and I could do it, but I'm not going to say it was my passion. I don't want to look in people's mouths and look at amazing crowns that have just been done or fillings. It's just not my vibe. But what that did was inspire me to find what I was passionate about, because I was just in my head, I was like, I want to come to work and feel that passionate about what I'm doing.
Yeah, for sure. And did you find that?
I did find that. So it took me a little bit of time and a little bit of nudging through, different people, friends and family. But eventually I kind of just had this clarity, and I said to myself, I'm going to become a yoga teacher. I'm going to do my teacher training with the view to open my own studio and leave my job. And that's what I did.
Yeah, you did that. Yeah. That's exactly what you did.
Yeah, I did exactly that.
How much time did it take from going from dental industry, realizing you weren't in the right thing, to finding you're in the right thing, to then making the move, to then actually finding some success?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
Did it in a week, or did it take a while?
It took a while to. So one, I knew I wanted to find what I was passionate about. Like I said, it took me a while to discover that yoga was the thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had said to me, you'd make a really great yoga teacher, and you should do your training. And I looked into a few different ones. I was like, nothing really resonated.
Where did you go, by the way?
I ended up doing my training at Moksha, which is a small, beautiful studio owned by a very dear friend of mine now, Emma. And
Whereabouts is that?
It's in Bentley.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an incredible, small, beautiful community, really authentic teachings, a really holistic teacher training that pushed me to my limits. I did my teacher training while I was working full time. And
it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of contact hours, right?
It was a lot of hours. I did it in like 6 months.
Yeah. What is it? A month intensive?
So back then it was 6 months intensive. So 2 lectures a week, 2 assignments a week for 6 months.
So how many contact hours was that?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. The way the program is structured now is slightly different.
Sure.
And what's interesting is now I facilitate a portion of the training, which is like the business and marketing section, which is really lovely to kind of come back full circle after, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So I did my training there, and now I've forgotten what the initial question was.
The question was
the time it took.
Yeah, so just digging into the teacher training itself, how long that took for you to kind of figure out that you wanted to do it, and then getting it done, and then actually making a career out of it. Because the switches, the reason why I ask is the switches in careers and stuff. I'm thinking, I'm working through a lot of this stuff. Like we've got the podcast and I've got the business on the side as well. And, I've always been pretty scatterbrained. I'm slowly trying to hone it all back in.
Yeah.
And I'm just interested to get a feel for what that felt like at the time, when you've got commitments, when you've got maybe like a house, or when you've got things to pay for and you're considering changing it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
In an industry that's not necessarily consistent.
Yeah. And in an industry like I have no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea about yoga.
To get into
the industry.
Before you can go, you know what?
Yeah.
This makes sense. I'm doing this.
Yeah. So so going back to trying to find that clarity, I think that question of like, well, what am I passionate about? Maybe at a guess, maybe 6 to 8 months, that was like sitting with me of like, well, what do I do?
So waking up every day, going to your job, thinking,
this is not it. This is not it. Oh my God. This is not it.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. Like I said, I enjoyed the people I worked with. But probably let's say 6 to 8 months.
You felt like there was a gnawing feeling that you could be doing
something different.
Yeah. You could be contributing to the world in a way that aligned with you better.
Yes, correct. Because it's not that dentistry isn't. You're still helping people. Yeah. But I was like, it
didn't resonate with you.
Yeah. So there was that. And then the clarity came. Okay, you're going to be a yoga teacher. You're going to do your training. You're going to open your own studio.
Yeah.
So from that moment on, things just like spiraled quickly.
Yeah.
I think because I said yes to the universe.
Yeah.
Pretty much I think I had that clarity. I enrolled in my teacher training maybe like 4 weeks later, knowing it was a 6-month course.
Yeah.
However, within that, I was like, okay, so I'm doing the teacher training, but I don't know how I'm going to open up the business. So I didn't really know that next step.
Yeah.
But the next step.
Do you need to know the next step to move forward? You don't, by the sounds of it. Get it all worked out.
No, you definitely don't. Yeah. You don't. And I think just opening up and trusting the next step will come when it's right, will happen. Yeah. And so that kind of happened. So I was in a relationship at the time, and obviously like I'm doing my training. This is what I want to do in the future. Like I want to have my own studio, and we're talking about that within the relationship. And then my partner at the time, who was my co-founder, kind of came up with a portion of the idea for what is now known as Humming Puppy.
And what was the idea?
So the way that it came to him was whilst he's very much a beginner at yoga, he had a meditation practice whereby he would experience vibrations in his temples when he meditated, which is not unusual to meditators. It can happen.
Yeah,
you get that.
Yeah, I understand. When I did my Vipassana, about 3 days in, I just started vibrating. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck is this? So I understand.
Yeah.
I understand fully.
So essentially he was at a bar with a friend having a drink, and he could feel the floors underneath him vibrating.
Very sensitive person.
Clearly, right?
That's a high level.
I think the bar fridges were down, down in like a cellar.
Yeah.
And it was actually at the Smith in Paran. Anyway, he was like, oh, that's the sensation I get when I meditate. What about injecting frequency or vibration into the yoga studio whilst you practice? Yeah. So he essentially rang me up and said, I've got this idea, like, let's have dinner. We went out for dinner that night. It was actually Valentine's Day. We kind of completely forgot it was Valentine's Day until we rocked up and everyone's in couples and there's flowers and everything. Yeah. And so he's
always on the grind.
Always on the grind, right?
Married to the grind.
So he shared this with me. And then I was like, well, have you ever heard of the Himalayan crystal singing bowls? Because the bowls are attuned to the different chakra points or frequencies within the body.
Interesting.
So essentially that's how Humming Puppy was born.
And where did the name come from?
Okay, so the name came from a desire to just be a little bit playful with things. We, as we started conceiving what the business would look like, we were very specific about how we wanted it to look and present, if you like.
And you can see that from context when we met.
Yeah.
I was very impressed and I was just sitting, remember when I was sitting there, I'm like, this is great. Whoever made this just gets it. And you're like, oh, that's me. Well, you didn't even say that. Someone else said that. Yeah. I was like, oh, it's her.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I guess what we wanted to do was have this beautiful sort of spa-like space, but knowing that it might feel exclusive, we wanted to make it feel a little bit more fun and playful and light. And so it was named Humming Puppy because we created a hum that plays in every class. And it was a cute, playful take on a downward-facing dog, so it's a humming puppy instead. So that's kind of how it was born.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what made you not have any music and not have any mirrors? Because I know a lot of yoga studios have those elements, and I've always wondered why you approached it differently.
Yeah, so, and our studio's black as well, which I think is like a key point of difference as well. So we wanted to create a darker, perhaps more soothing space to help you get into like a meditative state rather than having it be light and bright. Those darker spaces help you sort of drop into meditation a little bit quicker rather than if you're sitting in a light-filled space. And so there was that. The lack of mirrors, again, like I don't just like, can we just not look at ourselves the whole time? Like there's enough of that. Yeah. So we wanted to just have a really minimal space that was, a place that just felt like you could just come in and switch off.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel that, as I said, when I came in with my friend Steph, who was working, and I was just blown away with how good it was. And I've been to a lot of studios. I've traveled the world a lot, and I was just like, this is by far the best studio I've been to, and that's by a long shot, which is really a testament to the work that you guys have done. And then the excitement really developed when I realized you had a New York space, so all that hell that you went through, all that trauma that you went through.
I'm glad you appreciate and enjoy it.
It was worth it, because you've created a piece of space in a place that doesn't have it. And I think that for the right people, that can probably save them in that city. Because from my experience, like I love New York so much, but I get to a point where I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here and I need to leave. I need to, like, when I felt that, I just end up getting frustrated at everything. Everything's annoying. I'm not happy around anything. I just left and went to the Catskills for a couple of days. I'm like,
I need some nature.
Get me out of here. Yeah. Well, I mean, that leads into my next question, because you have a lot of consistency across the, I've only been to the Melbourne and the New York one, but I'm guessing the Sydney one has got a similar high standard. So how have you gone about maintaining high standards in a very high touch point, like customer focused business? There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in maintaining that consistency. So I'd be curious to understand what strategies you used.
Sure. So when I was working in the dental industry, there is a lot of policy and process to ensure that things are sterilized and clean and, health and safety, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially what I did in also thinking about, having a yoga studio was I want this to be set up like a business with really solid foundations. Mm-hmm. So right from the get-go, there was a policy and procedure around everything.
So you built out the policies and procedures before you opened? Or did you go as you go?
Built them out as much as we could in thinking about what is the customer experience going to be like, what's going to come up, what sort of questions, what sort of frequently asked questions might we get.
You have just like a huge stack of books. You go, read this.
We have a pretty extensive Google Drive.
Gotcha.
Which has got a document for fucking everything.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's also like not where my brain lives anymore. Like
gotcha.
It's too much. Like the operational side is like I'm done. Yeah. However, so going back to your original question, it's like so a lot of it came from just having those solid foundations set up, then using those policies and procedures to train staff as you hire and induct, so that they're all very clear on these are the expectations, this is what needs to be done at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, in between classes, et cetera, follow the guidelines.
And then is it a case of, you can have all the procedures in place, but if you don't have the right people, listen to them, it doesn't matter.
100%.
So are you filtering very early on the hiring process? Like how are you catching the wrong people before they get in?
Yeah, so with our hiring process, we do a lot of screening. There's a lot of things we look for just in that initial application.
How does that look? I'd love to. If you were hiring me for a marketing role,
No. Okay. So how does it start? Look, people come to us in a whole bunch of different ways. So they can come through friends and family. They can come through emails. They can come through, as students as well. Yep. So there's a lot of things we look for. I'm all about clear communication and consistency of, what would I say, like consistency in the way that you just show up. Is also really important. Mm-hmm. So we sort of screen. We're looking for obviously, people whose values are aligned with us. We would then kind of go through like an interview process. So that's like the first initial step of having a conversation with them.
How do you find out whether their values are aligned?
By asking.
Don't really know their values.
Yeah, no, exactly. By kind of asking and.
What are your values?
Well, there's a sort of questions. Or what are you looking for? Like, why did you apply to work at Humming Puppy?
Yeah.
2, like, what are you looking for from a workplace? And they don't need to know their values or be able to articulate them, but you can kind of gauge from a conversation of like what's important to them.
So it's a very gut kind of level feeling mainly, or is it systematized more?
It's like, for me, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
And in saying that though, I have got those feelings wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's
really wrong in the past. Really wrong.
How more often have you got them right than wrong? Like what's the kind of...
more often, yeah. I'm going to say like 90% of the time we get it right.
Okay.
There's that 10% that you don't.
Yeah.
And that what I think comes down to is like desperation. Like...
Are you being desperate to hire?
Yeah. Gotcha. We need to fill a role because I can't keep working 10 different roles. I need someone to take one of those roles.
Do you end up making more work for yourself by hiring the not quite right person, or is it a step in the right direction, do you think?
No, you make more work for
Okay,
yourself.
so you're better off just not hiring.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I've kind of got to the point where I'm like, I'd rather do the work than hire the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough.
I'd rather work a little bit harder, just wait, be really patient and hire the right person, because the wrong person can absolutely fuck everything up. Sorry for swearing.
That's fine. What's the most fucked up thing someone's ever done working for you?
Oh, Jesus. What's the most fucked up thing?
You don't have to name names.
Yeah, no. Look, there's oh,
you don't have to answer that.
No. I mean, look, nothing really terrible has happened.
No one's burnt the place down.
No one's burnt the place down. It's just like lack of integrity in their work ethic, showing up, lack of them not supporting the rest of the team, them kind of just doing their own thing, them being like gossip. I can't stand. I can't stand anyone who has a gossipy nature. Yeah. It just breeds a really bad culture. Yeah. So those sorts of people have been moved on. Okay.
How quickly do you?
Well, it's why we have that 3-month probationary period. Okay. I'm like, once we get to that point, it's not working. I'm like, I'm sorry, we're done.
Yeah. So you give them 3 months.
So, it's kind of like a safeguard of an employment contract. You have that 3 months.
However, I've had that used against me.
But, even quicker than that. Like sometimes I wouldn't wait 3 months. If it was, in the first month it was not working, I would just call it quits then and there. But that 3 months is a really great indication to see if that person is a good fit for your culture. And
3 months is a long time still.
It's still a long time. It's a long time. And then in your mind, you're like, okay, I need to recruit and hire again. There's going to be like a month of me doing the work. So it can be very overwhelming getting rid of people. But it's like this weight off your shoulders when they go. It's like, oh my God, I can actually breathe again.
Yeah. You really got to trust your gut. Yeah. A lot of the times. Do you ever feel? I feel bad. I feel so bad when I've to the point where I drag it out way too long.
Of getting rid of the person?
Yeah. Well, come on. And then, wait, no, this is not it. And then I give so many chances.
Of course you feel bad because it's, you're dealing with another human being, that maybe doesn't realize the things that they're not doing right. And it's not because you've not told them. Like as long as you've kind of told them, given them feedback and you've kind of given them a chance to make some changes, which I think is really important, not giving them feedback and just blindsiding them with, I'm sorry, this isn't working. Yeah. And then not really understanding why, I think is terrible.
I got blindsided on a job. Yeah, we can talk about it afterwards.
Okay. So of course you feel bad because this is for some of them, it's like, this is your livelihood. Like this is
for a lot of them.
For a lot of them, it's like, well, if they don't have this work, then they may not have other work, or it really eats into their finances. So of course you feel bad. It's never a nice thing to do. But you just kind of
just got to do it.
It's necessary sometimes. Not everyone's a right fit. It's like a relationship, right? Maybe that just doesn't work out. It's like, sorry, bye.
Maybe, to be honest, it's probably a similar vein to my relationships as well. This has dragged on for way too long.
Yeah. We need to end this now. We're done.
Never good at that. I'm getting better, but historically, not great at that. Yeah. But it's funny. I probably should, assuming I'm jokingly about getting a job with you, I've been fired from every single job except for one.
Oh, Adam.
Every single job.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you know why?
Various reasons. I mean, we can go through them if you want. My first job was at the Sporting Globe. I was a bartender. From what I gather, I got fired because I talked too much.
Oh, that's not a bad thing.
Well, I mean, again, not right person. They were like, the issue was that I talked too much, and me talking too much made the other staff feel like they were pulling too much of the weight.
Okay.
I couldn't help it. I just can't help it. Have a good chat to people. Maybe this is why I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
You're in the perfect role right now.
Yeah. And then the second job, I worked at Glue. Didn't get fired from that, but I probably should have.
But that's great. I mean, that's customer service. You got to talk to people.
Yeah, but then I started like running events and like spruiking my own business. It was a whole thing.
Okay.
I've always hustled, and maybe, I've always hustled, and things have been super blurry and mixed into one big bag of things, as opposed to I'm getting better at just now I'm realizing it as I'm realizing I probably have some form of ADHD, and I need to change the way I approach things. Like I need to focus on one thing at a time, do it, next thing.
Yep.
Do it, next thing, do it, and just dedicate specific blocks of time to specific tasks, as opposed to I've always been now that I'm understanding it, I've always been in this headspace of I'll do a bit of this, I'll do a bit of this, I can do all of this.
Yeah. Do you hyper focus?
No, I'm just constantly distracted.
Okay.
And I'm constantly being pulled in different directions by the most urgent thing.
Yep.
An example of that is I feel the need to instantly reply to messages and emails, even though I've got important things to work on, and it gnaws at me. And I think that is a specific ADHD trait. Yeah. Like it hurts me.
Yeah.
It churns my stomach.
Yeah.
So now that I'm recognizing that I don't have to reply, I might never have to reply.
Yes.
It's slow, but we're making progress. The third job was a graduate engineering position because I studied civil engineering and commerce. I didn't really want a job, but I thought I should get a job. Yeah. So I got a job.
Yeah.
And I worked there for a month, and it was hard. I'd underestimated what working in construction would be like. And it was 50 plus hour weeks plus 10 hours of travel.
Wow.
Plus trying to run at the point in time I was DJing and running a weekly nightclub. Mm-hmm. I did a month, and I was like cooked.
Yeah.
And I'm not a hustler. I'm a hustler, but I'm not I'll do 60-hour
not
weeks.
80 hours.
I'm like, give 20-hour weeks. I'm happy.
Yeah. Perfect.
Hey, 9 hours sleep, 20-hour weeks.
Yeah.
I wonder what I could do with a good 60-hour, consistent 60-hour work weeks. Probably take over the world, but I don't know. I don't know if we've got the constitution for it at the moment. We'll see. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But then I went to Europe, and I came back, and they fired me when I got back.
Yep.
It's kind of whack because
this was the engineering job?
Yeah, they could have fired me while I was overseas, and I could have stayed overseas.
Yeah.
But they brought me back, brought me into the office, and then fired me.
Oh, damn.
Come on. So that was the third one. And then I worked for a nightclub for about 4 years as like a promoter, a bit of marketing. It was kind of like a GM role. And then partially losing my drive in that business, partially new people coming in that were younger and more interested in what was going on. And then me going to New York was a culmination of, when I got back from New York last year, they said, no, we're going to move on. So it's pretty much every one of them.
Yeah, okay. Just going back to the email thing, I read somewhere a long time ago that your inbox is someone else's to-do list.
Yeah, definitely.
Not doing that.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah, I've had to train myself to not answer emails, to not open email boxes. It's hard, but once you do, it's like, oh my God, I've got all this time.
Really?
It's great.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Not got to that point yet.
Try it.
Just check out is what you're saying.
It's not checking out. It's like, it's just creating space for yourself to actually think and just not be in it all the time.
Yeah. I wonder where that comes from, being just needing to be in your inbox all the time, wondering what.
I think it's just the nature of society these days. It's like we live in a hustle culture where, taught that we've got to keep achieving, to keep striving, to have, the house, the car, the kids, all of that, the private schools. We've got to kind of it's like we've been taught to keep grasping for more. We're never satisfied with what we've got.
Can you be in both spaces at the same time?
I think so.
How do you do that?
I feel like I'm in that space at the moment where I'm just like beyond grateful for everything that I have. And I know there's more in me from if we talk about a work or business perspective. I know I'm not done. Like I'm not at retirement yet by any means, right? But I'm also not grasping for the answer. I just feel in a really grounded, safe place at the moment where like the answer will come, the clarity will come. And right now, just explore, just get curious about everything that comes your way, see what's there, pick up what feels good, leave the rest behind, and just be really open. So I think it's possible. I think it's possible.
Okay. I'll let you know when
I think a lot of it's gratitude.
Yeah? So do you have a gratitude practice? Like how does that look for you?
Yeah, I don't have a gratitude practice like what a lot of people might attribute that to, where they, have a gratitude journal, do that first thing in the morning. It's just something that I naturally just like feel.
How do you feel that? Like what does it feel like?
Teach you.
I'm just kidding. I'm so grateful.
What does it feel like?
I'm stoked about every day. It's great.
Honestly, I think it comes from doing a lot of work. What we're talking about before, all the therapy, all the this and the that, and like learning about yourself, learning about other people, I think is like equally important as what the effort and time we put into ourselves. It just naturally comes up where I'm like,
this is sick.
This is amazing. Like I've got this beautiful apartment. My family's happy and healthy. And of course there are things that are going to go wrong in between all of that, but it's like I've got a great life, Of course I want more. Of course I have this vision.
Of course.
Pardon?
Of course.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Does it
absolutely.
have to be of course?
I don't know. Does it? I don't know.
Anyway.
But, I do have a vision and a dream, and I can see it really clearly.
Just can't tell anyone just yet.
No. I can tell you this one, okay. But it's not business related. Or maybe it is actually. But yeah, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And for example, the first time I went to New York was, I can't even remember. I'm going to say maybe 15 years ago. But I went there and I remember how much I loved that city at the time. And I was like, I want to live here for a year.
Did you?
And then I ended up doing it.
I don't want.
Yeah, and then I
feel
got
like that doesn't
there.
count though. You're like grinding.
No, I think it counts.
Okay.
I think it counts.
Okay.
So I feel like I perhaps planted that seed all those years ago, didn't really think anything of it, landed in New York, and it was that moment where I was like,
oh, I've done it.
I did this. Yeah. I dreamt this. Dreaming sucks. Because it's such a state, like I don't want to dream anymore. But yeah, so this vision of it's there, but I don't know the answers of how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
It'll just happen. And I trust that it will happen. Like I trust, whatever you want to call it, spirit, universe, your high power, God, whatever. I just like place so much trust and faith in that grace will guide me.
So what is it? What's the vision?
Oh, there's just this vision of I have this vision of a U-shaped house. There's a pool in the middle. There's a view across land and I can see the ocean or water in the distance. And I just see my family, my friends like coming, and it's like a place of retreat and refuge. And it's just like full of incredible memories and kids running around, and that's one vision that I have.
I know the exact site.
Do you? Yeah. I don't know where it is in the world.
Exactly where it is. I've seen that exact thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can talk about it offline.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah.
Not far away either. It's like an hour away.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know where it is. And then there's a person with me as well. It's like, yeah, I can really see that.
Okay.
I can see that.
So what are you doing to get there? You don't know yet? You just kind of
I don't know.
See what happens?
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I feel like it'll just come.
Yeah.
You know, it'll come.
And it probably won't come in the way that you expect it to
Exactly.
come. Right.
Exactly. So that's where you kind of just got to let go and just like trust and just, you know, work through it, because I also look at life as like you don't necessarily, whether you turn left or right, you're not making a wrong decision. You might just get to where you want to go in a different route.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying before with the yoga teacher training, there was something I wanted to ask you about that we didn't touch on. I've been thinking about doing my yoga teacher training for a while, and it's definitely something on the list of things to do. You did it in Australia. Would you recommend it being done in, say, India or Bali or any of Thailand or any of the other parts of the world? Kind of what's your pros and cons around doing it in different places?
I think there are a lot of pros to doing it in India with Indian teachers of that lineage. I think that if you want to be a teacher, then you need to ensure that the training that you do gives you the opportunity to teach as you walk through it. So, for example, the training that I did, as I said, we had like 2 lectures a week. At the start of each lecture, one of us, like within the students, would teach to our peers. And then obviously throughout the different modules, particularly the asana-based modules, you would, you know, teach and practice teaching.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had to do like beginners courses and public classes within that training as well. Essentially what that did was it gave me the confidence to teach straight away.
Feedback loop.
Yeah, straight away. Whereas a lot of trainings, you know, it might come to the end of the training, however long it is, and your assignment is to teach one pose. Yeah. And then that's all the teaching you've ever got.
Yeah, it's not
experience. And it's like you're sending these people out into the world who had no practical teaching experience and you're expecting them to teach yoga, and they actually feel really disheartened because they can't do it. So they, you know, they come through to us like as, you know, new teachers, and you can see it instantly. You can see the teachers who have had the experience, especially new teachers, and you can see the ones that don't. So I think that is key if you want to teach asana classes.
Feedback.
Then have
feedback
that
through
feedback.
Teaching.
Have that practice.
And you can do that. How do you find out whether a course is going to have feedback teaching inside of it?
You need to ask.
Just ask.
You just
it's not a consistent thing that
it's not a consistent thing of all courses. You just got to ask. You know, and I would also say if you're, you know, looking into taking training courses within studios where you live, like go to that studio, take classes at that studio, like make sure that that studio is in alignment with what you're looking for. And even if it's not, you'll learn something anyway.
How do you do that if you're booking a month away in Bali or Thailand?
You can't. Sometimes you can't unless the local studio is doing the training overseas.
Yeah.
But, you know, I would ask community, just ask around, you know, call them, email. But as I said before, like, even if you don't get exactly what you want out of it or it doesn't completely align, you'll still learn something. And that's what the philosophy of yoga is teaching you. It's like there's something in this to be learnt.
Yep.
So, and do that what you choose.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I noted that you went from the dental into Humming Puppy, was there some consulting work that you did in between that? I saw something that you were working on.
So the consulting work and the coaching work has really
after?
been an extension of my work at Humming Puppies.
So where did that come from?
That was imagined in the pandemic.
Okay.
At a time where, again, there was this space to move in a slightly different direction and kind of just utilize what I was already doing within the business, but taking it outside the business. So just the nature of having, 5 studios across, Australia and the US is that you are coaching and mentoring your staff. And so it was really just taking that knowledge and expanding on that in a more formalized way outside of Humming Puppy. So that's kind of how that came to be. But I equally get as much out of that as what I used to get from teaching yoga.
Are you still doing the consulting stuff?
Yep. So I still do coaching, but I don't teach yoga anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped.
Unless you're covering a class, or is that?
No, I don't even cover classes anymore.
Cover classes. So I got you on probably one of the last classes you'd done a few months ago then maybe.
Yes, you would have.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely stepped away from teaching. At I guess I'm going to say like 4 or 5 months ago, and over the course of having the business, I kind of went in and out of teaching and not teaching, and basically the business and running the business operationally was too much to also be teaching.
Yeah, I understand that.
I felt like at the time I wasn't investing in myself as a teacher in the same way my teachers would invest in themselves.
Yeah, I understand that.
So I felt like
you weren't the best fit for the job anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could do it, but I just felt like I was doing the students a disservice. I'm like, these guys are better than me. Like, let them teach,
I don't know. I think you're pretty good.
I've got my thing.
From my experience with you and other teachers, I feel like you were up there. I wouldn't discount yourself.
Thank you. But it's also, there were periods where I'm like, I just want to work on the business rather than in it. And I kind of went out and came back in, and I went back in earlier this year, and then I just decided, no, I'm done. And I actually feel now I'm really done with teaching yoga. It's not anything. That's it. I'm done.
Ever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should never say never, but I feel that I feel like I know that in myself because when I take classes, I'm in the class, I'm in my practice. I'm not thinking to myself, oh, that was a really great sequence, or I really like that theming, and I could incorporate that. Like could I teach again? Whereas now it's like, no. It just feels like a firm no.
Okay.
I'm done.
It's a hard no. Fair enough. With the and sorry, jumping back into the business side of things, with the US and stuff, how have you managed to keep that consistency up across the continents? Because everyone's based in Australia. All the kind of owner teams are based in Australia. Is that?
Yes. So how we maintain the consistency? Before the pandemic, I don't know how we didn't realize that Zoom was a thing. Like Zoom was life-changing.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm like, why have we not
Zoom
been?
Calls?
Yeah, why?
Just with work with staff.
Yeah, like we never utilized it.
Same with QR codes. They're actually really useful.
I know. So
very useful things.
So pre-pandemic, the consistency was maintained by me traveling a lot between the studios. So I'm always been based in Melbourne, but it would mean I'd have to travel to Sydney, I'd have to travel to New York, which is not a bad thing, right? But it's also a lot. But we would communicate over basically email and Slack was our forms of communication. And then I would come in and probably scare everyone. I know people were scared of me coming in. I'm like, I'm not scary. Like I'm here to support you. I'm so happy to be here. And I only kind of got feedback about that. after the fact, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm scary. Anyway.
The head office is coming.
I know. It's like, oh my God. Oh my God, Jackie's coming. So that's how we maintained it then, but also having those policies and procedures helped guide our managers.
Yeah. So it was led by the managers?
Yeah. So each studio has basically a studio manager. Yeah. Now we have like a teaching manager in each studio as well, and basically they just run it. But during the pandemic, we then discovered Zoom, which was an amazing way for all of our 3 studios
to work together.
Yeah,
gotcha.
And it was honestly like such a massive change and improvement in our business where we're like, oh my God, we can meet every day. Like we can talk every day. It doesn't have to be random. Yeah. So that has been
managing the continent, managing the time zone is probably the tough part.
So it was just, that was amazing.
Yeah.
So now, so each studio has a teaching manager, studio manager. We've got a marketing team, we've got a sales team, and our CEO, he lives in Colorado. Yeah. So he oversees all the operations. Yeah. And he works remotely the entire time.
He's not even in one of the
He's not even physically. I mean, he used to be. He used to be an assistant manager in New York, so he knows us well.
Yeah.
And he's just, I think he's flying back home now. So he was just there this last week.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Very nice. It sounds like there's been a lot of challenges. Right. So what's been some of the most significant challenges that you've encountered in growing this business?
Significant challenges. I feel like I have to categorize it into pre and post pandemic, like mid pandemic and then post pandemic.
Sure. Let's go post pandemic. No, actually, I don't know. Maybe give me one of each.
Okay. So
in the old world.
Yeah. Okay. So pre pandemic was me being burnt out.
Yep. So how many hours were you working?
I couldn't even fathom to tell you. Hectic. As I said before, like communicating with the States was like just on all the time.
Yeah.
At some point of the day, wherever you were in the world, and the travel really took its toll on me. So so pre-pandemic burnout.
Yeah.
During the pandemic,
survival.
Like how do we survive this when there's literally no revenue coming in?
How did you survive it?
Fortunately, in Australia, we had access to JobKeeper, so we could, support our staff at least in that way. In the States, unfortunately, we didn't have any financial support. We had a small amount, which we burned through pretty quickly. We also have an incredible investment team who helped support us as well, which was amazing. But pandemic times were, really, really challenging from a personal level. I separated from my co-founder and partner at the time. We moved in different directions. We wanted different things. That was extremely challenging because it wasn't just business, it was also personal.
Yeah. And you couldn't leave the house for a while there. So you're just sitting there contemplating
life, going through it all. However, I really look back, and as I think I said this before, maybe we were on or off air. I'm so grateful for the pandemic. It honestly gave me space to just think and just be with it all and not be distracted by the world and work. It was like, you are going to have to sit with all of these feelings. You're going to feel them like so intensely. It's going to almost break you. But you're going to get through it, and you're going to be a different person on the flip side. And that's what happened.
Yeah. I went through a breakup during COVID as well.
Yeah.
So I get it.
And
you're just like,
I had a lot of VMs with friends who were incredibly supportive, but that's how I got through, like VMs. And
VM?
voice messages.
Oh, voice messages.
Really long voice messages. And a lot of tears.
Yeah, I understand.
So that was pandemic.
Yep.
And then post-pandemic has been, okay, how do we recover
Yep.
financially as a business and operationally in a way that's sustainable for everybody? And that's been really tough as well.
So what conclusions did you get to on the sustainability front? Like, what did you learn?
That we needed to do things differently, that the world and people do not engage in yoga in the same way.
So what's changed?
I think what's changed? I'm actually speaking quite specifically to Melbourne. I think that Melbourne itself is still experiencing a fair bit of trauma.
Really?
From the pandemic and hangover of, going back to work, into offices, and dynamics have changed for people. There is this whole working from home thing now. Like, you don't have to go into the offices. I feel like people who used to come into the studio discovered that there was online yoga and that they could practice at home. They didn't need to go have a studio.
The isolation is so bad, though.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
We're losing our ability to connect.
Yeah. I also think that people want to do more than just one thing.
How do you mean?
They want to do yoga. They want to do Pilates. They want to do, your body fits, your F45. Yeah. It's like, and they can.
But if you can't be everything. You're going to be half-assed at everything.
I can't say that.
Huh?
I know that.
I know that.
But
so how do you explain that without throwing mad shade at?
I don't know.
Maybe you should do the A/B testing ads.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't know. I've got this funny ad idea, and I've never actually used it for anything specifically. But if I was like a Coke or a Pepsi and I was doing something like that, there was this ad idea of do you know Bean Squeeze? Do you know what Bean Squeeze is?
No.
Oh, okay. So there were these two, or you could say, getting a coffee at a beautiful cafe. Yeah. And getting a coffee at McDonald's. They're both coffee, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Same concept.
Yeah.
And you can apply that to so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just see this ad where it's just like, it's the same thing though, ... but it's clearly not the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think our mentality with our business was always like, do one thing and do it well.
Yeah.
Because we get approached by a lot of people like, oh, can we do this? And can we do this in your space? Or, oh, you should do this and you should do that. It's like, we're teaching yoga.
Yeah.
That's it. We're just going to focus on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think.
So you don't want to do like deep house yoga?
No.
Where we get like
we
DJs,
could in Melbourne. Like the sound is incredible in there.
Yeah, it's a great room.
Oh, it's a great room.
We get some decks set up. And I'll DJ and
I love turning the music up in there. It's so great.
Did it at Burning Man one year. We're just like in the dust doing yoga.
Yeah, I love it.
The DJ's playing. It was
so yeah, I think people just move and live differently. But we've come back and we're okay. And again, it really does come down to our incredible investors who have supported us along the way. But in that, it's like we've had to think about how we staff that is financially viable, but also like sustainable from what we're expecting and asking of our staff.
And the customer experience.
Exactly.
Maintain,
yeah. What do we compromise or not compromise on? Yeah. And at the start of this year, we had to make some really difficult decisions to get back to a point of financial stability. Mm-hmm. In all honesty, we're not there yet, but we're close. Mm-hmm. But within that, we also had to really consider operational sustainability. So can our team actually continue working in this way? Mm-hmm. Or not. Mm-hmm. So supporting them in that way. So there's like a really fine line between financial stability and operational stability, and just trying to maintain that so that your team is feeling supported and that the experience for the customer not lazy. Not lazy.
Supported but motivated.
Yeah. So it's a fine line. It's like it's a bit of a balance and a juggle, but yeah, we're getting there.
Okay. Good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. The a little thread that I want to kind of go down, because I've not really had somebody experience it. I've not really spoken to somebody who's experienced it firsthand. So you experience the US lack of support and you the Australian significant support. I'm of the mindset, maybe because I was in a much better financial position at the start of the pandemic than I am now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was of the mindset at the time that there shouldn't be any financial support, and the weaker financially the weaker finance businesses should go under to create space for the stronger ones or new things to come up afterwards. Mm-hmm. But instead, what happened was all of these businesses, kept moving forward at the expense of everybody in the long run. Mm-hmm. And it's so the story hasn't finished playing out yet. And it's as though now the defaults are beginning. Mm-hmm. Now the people are going under. But it just delayed it by a couple of years. It didn't actually solve any problems.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around those two versus the US, just like figure it out yourself, to Australia, here, have everything? Which one was better long term?
Which one was better? God. Both were difficult for us. What I noticed in the pandemic was it was really difficult to watch our staff suffering.
In the US?
In the US, in the pandemic, because for them trying to get any sort of benefits or allowances was just horrendous.
We were the opposite though. You'd have, from my experience, I was going from a 60 grand a year salary to 750 a week, and then you've got a one shift a week 18-year-old getting 750 a week. Mm-hmm. And it was, to me, I thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then that just got fed, all that money just got spent on crap.
Yeah.
On like e-commerce crap.
Yeah, like, online shopping.
Yeah, it's like it didn't actually.
It didn't. Maybe it sort of fed into the entitlement.
Oh yeah,
kind of thing. It's like I'm entitled to this, and I'm going to spend it and enjoy it, and now it's over. I'm still not going to do anything.
Yeah. Well, there's this thing I was listening to. Warren Buffett basically said there's nothing that messes up people more than, I'm going to butcher this, but there's nothing that messes up people more than easy money.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm definitely seeing that.
Yeah. It was really hard to watch our team going through what they were going through, and the stress of financial, like how we're going to pay our rent, like we can't get access to money. That was really tough, and like we just couldn't do anything for them because we had we didn't have a surplus of funds in Australia to give to them. So it felt unfair, and it felt really difficult to have those conversations as a company as a whole, where they could see there's this portion of the company in Australia who are getting money, who can still work and keep like the on-demand platform going, whereas they couldn't get paid for what they were doing. Like we couldn't ask them to work without getting paid, and they were really suffering. It was terrible. So that was hard. Yeah, I don't know though, on like a different level, I don't think there was even like it was good or bad, because also like in Australia, like everyone's still going through it, even if they're getting paid. It's totally been delayed, and sadly
now everyone's having a really tough time.
Yeah, and we're seeing I'm noticing a lot of yoga studios are closing now.
Yeah, but it could have happened 2 years ago, and then the new ones could have come up, and
yeah. It's tough. It's tough to watch.
Does it make it worse now, do you think? Because now people have this grandiose sense of who they are and what they can do that isn't a part of reality. And they're making, from my experience, I pre-COVID, I was thriving. During COVID, I probably got a bit overconfident, and now I'm not. And I'm thinking to myself, how did I get myself into this situation? How did we get here? Things were going so well, and now I feel like I've just lost touch of how people are thinking. Like I'm out of touch completely. Yeah. And I don't know how to get back into touch. It's like I missed something. I missed some memo.
But I think a lot of it comes down to that financial security, and that was one thing, I know a lot of people were saying, it was like, how, when it hit and there's no money and you can't get that immediate access to government funds, they're questioning of like, how did I put myself in this position that I don't have any savings?
Which is probably a good question to answer.
100%. So I feel like people now are being more frugal.
Even Australians?
I think so. I think it's a little bit – I think what's changed is that, honestly, I think I look at Broadsheet and there's a new restaurant or bar opening up every other day. Yeah. I think people are still going out. They're just not buying as much. Yeah. So they're still going to the cafes, but maybe just have one coffee and no food. Yeah. So I think people's spending habits have changed. Yeah. And naturally, because mortgage and interest rates have gone through the roof.
Which only went through the roof because of the money that everyone got.
Exactly. It's just this vicious cycle that we're in at the moment, and we're just like looped into it. And I don't know how you regain confidence in spending until those mortgage
people go out of business.
Yeah,
you don't, and it gets really hard.
Yeah,
which as I said, maybe it should have happened a few years ago. But and I wonder, I don't know where you sit with all of that sort of stuff, but I wonder if like, from what I'm understanding about I've kept, even though everyone forgot about the whole COVID thing, the moment I could leave, I've like kept track of it because I found it as a very interesting social experiment, and I'm like, it's not over yet. Like I want to see where this plays out. And a lot of the countries that long-term did really well, using, say, Sweden for an example. I was in Stockholm recently and I was chatting to a friend of mine, and she said that they didn't care.
Care about what?
About the locking down and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. They were just like, live your life. Like, go do what you need to do. Yeah. So everything was still open. And I remember there in the, on the news and stuff, they were getting completely demonized by a lot of the West. But I think they got it right. Yeah. And I wonder if we didn't have just free money, just sit here, sit quietly. We know what we're talking about, that maybe we wouldn't have been in 250 days of lockdown. Yeah. Maybe it would have had to been much more strategic. Yeah. And the considerations would have changed, and maybe the long-term consequences of people's mental health and the economy as a whole may have completely changed. Yeah. So I don't know what to do with the whole macroeconomic policy, but I just thought of that and I was like, I wonder.
These are big questions.
These are big questions. We're not going to get into these. Not going to get into these at all. But just like a flow of thought to, wonder what would happen when something it's maybe not similar, but these aren't new experiences that we've gone through.
No, not at all. And I think even like within Australia, Queensland, I think they might have had lockdowns for like, we're locked down for a weekend, and everyone was up, up in arms. Weekend, like 3 days. Yeah. But in my mind, I didn't live in Queensland at the time, but I feel like they were relatively like open and business as usual. I know obviously tourism gets impacted and stuff like that, but I think that in Australia, everyone's experience was very different, and in Melbourne it was particularly hard. But Sydney also went through the same thing. They had this extended 4-month lockdown, and
if we're all going through it, does it make it right though?
No, of course not. Of course not, right? But I agree with you. I feel like we're still coming out of it, and it impacts business hugely.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Anyway, we'll park that one. And we can talk about that offline in more detail. I don't want to get cancelled before I
Bringing up trauma for listeners. Stop
not
talking
people,
about COVID.
Not enough people listen to it for me to get cancelled. It's fine. Maybe this will be the one episode that goes crazy.
That goes viral.
Yeah. I had another little tangent that I wanted to go down. You mentioned your investors quite a lot. How did you go about finding investors?
So we were fortunate. My co-founder had connections through his other business. And so when we were looking for investment, he approached them. And they were willing to, just back the business. And they've been an incredible support financially.
Like a pitch deck side of things or just a conversation? How formal did you take it?
I believe there was a pitch deck from memory, which was
projections, all that sort of stuff. Kind of,
so that was, we brought on outside investors when we opened our Sydney studio.
So you bootstrapped the first one, or okay,
yeah. So they came in at that point, and then obviously helped fund the New York studio build.
Could you have done it without investment?
No.
Ever?
No.
Do you think it was the right move?
Investment?
Depends on what your goals are.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say it's wrong because we did what we did with it. But I don't know if it was right because there's a big chunk of the business that's not mine anymore.
Yeah, for sure. But does it net out to a bigger chunk of, like the pie is much bigger so it doesn't matter? No. Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
No, not for me anyway.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, my piece of the pie is pretty small.
Okay. Because of that requirement of investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fine line. I mean, because I'm thinking about this at the moment, how do I grow the events business without just blowing up all my own money? It's a fine line to figure out. So I've been loosely looking into these conversations, but I think that economics are very different for the events world than it is for a bricks and mortar business. Yeah. So anyway, it's interesting to to figure out, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, spending 6 months writing on one day. It's kind of wild, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, over time and due to the pandemic, our vision for the business really shifted and changed. I mean, we went to the US because we felt there was a lot more opportunity for growth and expansion.
You don't feel that anymore?
Oh, there definitely is. But what we learnt from going to the US and opening a studio in the way that we opened a studio, the costs attached to that build were that we were just spending way too much money on our setup costs. It's not viable. So we'd have to change our business model, which is fine. We could do that. But right now it's why we just could not even fathom opening another studio whilst the current studios aren't. They're not standing on their own 2 feet.
Yep.
But there's definite opportunity to expand in the US, far greater than what there is here.
But do you need to?
No, I don't think so.
What's the goal here? Why would you do that? I mean, is there some resounding why that you need to share what you've got to as much of the world as possible, or are you?
I don't feel there's any need to expand. I think just keep doing what we're doing and do it well. Yeah. And just, really sort of speak to or work with what we do really well and just keep doing that and then see where it goes. Because there's a bunch of different ways that you could pivot and expand and that don't have to be opening up a physical space.
What are you thinking?
With Humming Puppy? Well, currently we're in a mode where we're leaning into what we've always done well, which is sound. So leaning into more sound offerings, like sound baths and yin and sound, yoga nidra and sound. So kind of leaning into that, where I feel like, one of our, what would you call it? One of our strengths is a slower practice, a more gentle practice. We're definitely not known as a fitness studio or a studio that offers what you might define as power yoga or like in any way. Like we're much more gentle, restorative. So recognizing that that's one of our strengths and leaning into that is the direction.
Okay.
Yeah. And talking about it and promoting it because, we've had the hum right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And unless you've been to the studio, a lot of people don't get what we do.
Yeah.
Like what is it? Are there puppies there?
And
literally calls every week. So when is the puppy yoga? And they're legitimately, that's what they think.
Well, that's a thing.
It's a thing. So
I had a friend of mine from the US actually say that.
Yeah.
That exact thing. Oh God.
Which is understandable. I mean, it's in the name, right? It's a name says a lot about a business. It's a bit ambiguous.
That's fine. We love ambiguous. I can work with ambiguous.
Yeah.
You mentioned the yoga nidra stuff. I'm obsessed with yoga nidra now.
Okay.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. It's like replacing my need to sleep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's such a hack.
Yep.
It's so
great.
good. Yeah, it hasn't let me down yet once. So, I mean.
So do you use it as a way to recharge or go to sleep?
I use it as a way to recharge, and if I can't sleep, I use it as like a last ditch.
Yeah.
And I always seem to, I need to stop trying to use it as a last ditch. I should probably have it as one of my first or second things that I do.
Yeah.
Because there's been so many times now where I'm lying in bed or, I'm trying to have a nap and I think to myself, for 20 minutes, half an hour, I'm just getting nowhere. And then I fight my way into, all right, fine, I'll do a yoga nidra. And then I'm like, I'm out.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's been really interesting. So I've been telling everybody that I come across as having any relaxation or sleep issues to try yoga nidra.
Yeah.
Because it's like a win-win. It
it's
seems
great.
as though, why don't you talk about what it is?
So I guess in simple terms, it's like a guided meditation in some ways, and just working through the inner world to the outer, beyond, what we can sort of tangibly touch. I think the simplest term is it's like a guided meditation that puts you into it's not to sleep, but just puts you in that state where you can completely like recharge. So I think they say it's like having a couple of hours of sleep, like 20 minutes equates to maybe 4 hours of sleep. But so the idea is not to fall asleep. You're kind of staying quite conscious of where you're being guided through the body, and setting an intention as well at the start of the practice, and maybe setting having that be almost like an affirmation of what you're wanting to create on a subconscious level. But it's a beautiful, powerful practice, and great way to replace a nap. And feel recharged.
Yeah, I've noticed, especially when I've just for some context to the listeners, it's how I came across it was through Andrew Huberman. He started talking about it, Huberman Labs. No. It's a podcast, like a science podcast. He's a I can't remember, neuroscientist from Stanford. And he's got this really popular podcast now. It's all health. You probably really like, it's like 3-4 hour long, him just monologuing on deep dives on topics. Yeah. And one of them, he started talking about yoga nidra, and started using it. And yeah, he said something along the lines of there's a lot of science around the fact that it's the equivalent of a lot of like a deep sleep and can be used all the time. As 20 minutes is all you need. So once I came across this, I gave it a go, and I've noticed in periods where I am just going really hard and I don't have the time to sleep 8-9 hours that I really need, strategically adding 20 minutes of a yoga nidra. Or if I have to work a night, for example, 20-minute yoga nidra gets me either close to falling asleep, or if I accidentally do fall asleep, maybe I set my alarm for 25 minutes and I'm up and I'm good.
Yeah.
Which has been really, really helpful. And yeah, I know you're not meant to fall asleep as well. But I've noticed that once I realized that I was still getting benefits out of it without falling asleep, my brain then said, this is fine to fall asleep. It's weird. It's like, oh, you're right. Like, you're not thinking about it. So that like there's no issues here. So you can fall asleep now.
And essentially you're still receiving the same benefits. Just because you're not like mentally awake, you're still receiving the benefits because you're still listening, on a deep level. Yeah. But yeah, yoga is just great.
Great.
I personally love napping.
I love napping.
I can power nap like a boss.
I love napping. I love napping. Yeah. Well, we'll continue forward, and with digging into more community side of the business and the consulting and stuff, like, what strategies do you usually use to kind of engage and build community and loyalty?
Again, I think this comes back to consistency of product, if you like, and service. Yeah. If you want to like categorize a yoga class as a product, it is kind of a product in this sort of day and age of yoga in the West. So consistency there, consistency in communication, I think is really important. So ensuring that, and when I think about community, I think about team community and student community, and then us as a whole. So I think that really clear communication is vital. If there are policies that you want your students to know about, clearly communicating that across the board. It's not just one person saying it. So consistency, communication, presence, to those interactions that you're having, whether it's staff or students, and making an effort to get to know people and build relationships, I think is vital. Not just putting on a class and like, thank you, bye, we'll see you again, which is why we created the lounge in each studio.
That is so nice, by the way. Yeah. It's a really nice touch.
Yeah. So one of our key sort of key things that we incorporated into all studios, like right from the beginning, was to have a luxurious yet comfortable lounge where you could put your feet on the couch to build community. So,
and would you say it worked?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Our doors are open 30 minutes before the class. We're technically open the entire day. Yeah. Students aren't pushed out or rushed off. They're welcome to have tea with us. Back in the day, we used to have coconut water.
Back in the day.
Back in the days.
Budget cuts.
Budget cuts, yeah.
Just filtered water now.
Yeah, it's just filtered water.
Salt.
Yeah, the tea is amazing. So it was all those sort of little touches that helped build community and gave teachers, an opportunity to talk to students after class and not for no one to feel rushed, whether it's teachers feeling rushed at the end of class to get out to get somewhere else. We ask them to stay half hour after class, minimum. And having that space for students to also just kind of ground before they move into their day and have a place where they can talk and connect to the teacher and build that relationship. I think, with anything, I've been really thinking about relationship recently, and I think that it's an important consideration in everything that we do, not just with another person, whether it's family relationships or, community relationships that are external to your family, but, your relationship to, exercise or food or body or music or whatever it is. I think that there is real value in understanding what your relationship is to the world around you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how do you kind of understand that? Because that takes a lot of clear thinking.
Yeah. So that's probably the key thing in building that community, is building a relationship with the people that you're welcoming into the space, whether they're your team or your students, and then listening carefully to what it is that, one, that's motivating them to come, and two, like, what are their needs? Like, how do I meet the needs of this person sitting across from me, rather than imposing my own perspective or needs on them? It's like, well, what do they need? And treating people in the way that they want to be treated, not necessarily in the way that we think they want to be treated or the way we want to be treated, because they're two very different things.
I've always, I don't like using absolute terms. I'm trying to cut myself off. Historically, community has been a challenge for me, and haven't quite figured it out yet. And I see people around me that just seem to get it.
Yeah. What haven't you figured out?
I don't know. I think I think how to connect with people in a genuine way, but also maintain the integrity of the business. It's a lot of the times it's been business first, community second, which has got to a point, but then I'm noticing I'm hitting ceilings now. But there's always been a challenge between, everything that you've said there, these focuses on community, they're very intangible. You're using financial and human resource for something that is very intangible that you can't quantify.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I've not been able to make that shift and have that trust and understand how to actually do it. Maybe because I've had so much going on and I've always, have done so many different things and done so many things half-heartedly, maybe because it's not, haven't had the focus on one or two things. I don't know.
What does community mean to you?
Hmm.
I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to interview you now.
Go for it. A support system, probably, more than anything. But I think for me, I've never quite had that support system. So I don't know what it feels like internally.
Yep.
So I don't know how to then express that to others in the things that I do.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to fix that.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I hear you talk, I think about my historical sense of community, or maybe more so for me, it's about belonging.
Yeah.
I honestly don't feel like I've belonged anywhere. And I think that comes from, actually, this is going back to one of your previous questions, like way back about my upbringing, I think. So I shared with you that I'm biracial. So my mother's from Thailand, father Australian, Irish. And I have a lot of a new respect and understanding of perhaps what my mother went through as an Asian woman back in the 70s, raising two biracial kids in Adelaide, And I've really reflected on like her sense of belonging that was probably non-existent back there. It's like, where does she fit in? Which then fed into, I think for myself, it's like, well, I don't know where I fit in either. I'm not I kind of have a shoe in each foot, each place, you know.
I understand.
So I've gone through a lot of my life not feeling like I've really belonged anywhere.
Like I feel that too. For
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's been a really big thing for me. During the pandemic, it was like, whoa, I don't know how I'm even here in this life amongst this family.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I belong here either.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those questions got brought up, and I don't know how somehow this sense of belonging in Humming Puppy and that community has worked well for however I've done it. Again, I can't say it's tangible other than, okay, make an effort to build a relationship, make an effort to be consistent, make an effort to communicate clearly.
So basically you build trust.
Build trust through all of those things.
Yeah.
But even now, as I'm stepping away from Humming Puppy, I am very acutely aware that I feel like I belong. I felt like I've belonged there, but now once that community is not there for me, where do I belong now? And so that transition, and, you know, I think for me it's like I have to make an effort to build community elsewhere. And where do I do that? And how do I do that? Which is a really big question because, you know, if I'm kind of working on my own now, it's very isolating, as you said before, which is why, you know, I've kept my membership at St. Havens. Like, okay, I can go there and be around people because I derive so much of my social connection from my work. If I don't have that, what happens? You know, and I've got a great family and I've got great friends, but it's also like, but there's this huge void that I know is coming. So I can really kind of empathize without knowing your background and upbringing and stuff, but I can empathize with that questioning over belonging and community and what does that look like and how do you build it?
Yeah, I think the more you feel like you belong in a space, or the more you feel safe, the more comfortable you are to be less transactional with your relationships.
Yep.
Because you know that it will go around, it just kind of all goes around in a circle.
Yeah.
I feel a lot more community led when I spend time in New York than when I spend time in Australia. It's really weird. I'm a very different person.
Interesting.
Emotionally, over there than I am here.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I just don't get the Australian culture very well.
It's very unique.
I've never quite got the culture and I don't know. So it's an interesting one. I think about this a lot. I haven't answered it yet.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, let me ask you one final question and the main part of the podcast. And with all of this in mind and your experience and kind of the elements that the pathway that you've led, what advice would you give to, you know, entrepreneurs or people that are feeling like they don't have a purpose right now, or they're working in a space that they don't feel called to create their own, you know, business, maybe in wellness or maybe in an environment that isn't safe or traditional?
That isn't in wellness?
It could be wellness. Just basically, okay. You know, not treading the path that maybe they're expected to tread by the family they have or the people in their lives.
I think my key thing is meditation.
Really?
Which I also realize doesn't work for everybody, particularly if you're like highly anxious. It's difficult to meditate. I think movement.
So okay, let's just dig into what you were saying just there for a second. So meditation was the first thing that you went to.
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to achieve through meditation?
Space.
Okay. So what you're really saying is find a way to create space.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what are the ways that people can create space when they have kids and they have a job and they have a lot of financial pressures and they know they're not in the right path? What's the best way from your experience to juggle both creating that space to let whatever's coming, whatever like downloads they need to come through, while also surviving?
Mm-hmm. I think creating a daily practice of something, even if it's only 5 minutes a day, of whether it's meditation, whether it's just resting or sitting in the sun or going for a walk or journaling, I think it's just vital that people create some space for themselves. As I said, it doesn't have to be an hour walk. It could be like 5 minutes of sitting in a room, because I just think there's so much value in, connecting to nature is like, I think, vital for us to be reminded that there is so much power in connecting to the animate world, right? The things that we can't tangibly understand. I think people need to make a conscious effort to do these things.
Especially these days.
Yep. And know that it takes time to build new habits, so.
Was it like 30 days to build or 60 days or something?
I think I've heard like so many different viewpoints on this, like 12 days, 90 days. But I think creating some sort of a consistent habit in your day to be present and to be intentional. It could be lighting a candle, and setting the intention for the day, or a word, just whatever that word is. Like you might light a candle and go joy.
Yeah.
You could do affirmations.
Yeah.
Repeat them in the morning or at night. Yeah. You could pray, which I know can be controversial and kind of feel a bit
concept.
Odd to people, but you pray to whoever the hell you want to pray to, whatever you want to call it.
It's all the same concept. So like creating space, all the religions have basically some form of meditation practice.
Devotional practice.
Yeah, devotional meditation, whatever. I have a friend of mine, she's Christian, and I would always say to her, meditation. And then one day she turned around and said, I kind of do. Every morning I pray. Oh shit, I guess it's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. I think affirmations are somewhat the same thing as well. You're praying for whatever that is to, form or come into your vision. I think that, it's just being really intentional to go, okay, something needs to change. I'm going to take small steps towards that. Because I think so much of us get caught up in, I've got to do the thing now. Yeah. Like it's got to be big, it's got to be grand, it's got to be bold. Yeah. But I think that big, grand, bold things build over time. It's like planting a seed. Like that seed grows into, whatever it does, but it doesn't start off as a tree. Yeah,
it needs to be nurtured.
Yeah, you've got to nurture it. You've got to
build a frame around it. Keep the birds out.
You've got to water it. You've got to maintain it. You got to talk to it, whatever you want to do. But you got to really nurture whatever it is that your big, bold plan. And so I think it's just start small.
Yeah.
And then it will grow. And then you'll see the benefits and you'll crave that. You'll crave that time and then you'll make more time. And then I think that then has a beautiful ripple effect. So if you do have a family, it can ripple to your partner, it can ripple to your children, and they see that modeled and they're like, oh, I want a bit of that.
Yeah.
I want a bit of that peace and that calm. And then it just shifts that ecosystem and that vibrational attunement of everyone around you.
Yeah.
but you just got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. So just to recap, create space through small, consistent space creating habits. And then once you begin to feel something is maybe a direction you want to take it, that you want to go down, you don't have to make grand changes instantly, just small steps.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do a little rapid fire and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
If you could only do one tourist activity before you died, what would it be?
Didn't mean to go. This was really great. I honestly, initially, when you said this to me, I can't think of anything. So I had to ask a friend.
Okay.
However,
something you've done even.
Yeah.
Like if you had to just pick one thing to experience.
Oh, do you know what? I Googled it. I'm like
what to do
50,
before I die?
Like, something like that. And I was like, oh, I've been there. Anyway, here's my thing. My thing was the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
I think that would be.
Have you been?
I have not been.
It's on my list too.
I think that would be just phenomenal, mind-blowing, something to see.
I'm going to stay in one of those like igloo, no glass.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that day for sure.
Yeah. So that would be, that's on the top of my list, the Northern Lights. It's a big.
That's you only get to pick one. Is that the one?
Okay.
Oh,
well, that'll be.
Yeah, one more.
The second one would be the pyramids.
You know I'm Egyptian?
Oh no, I did not know that.
I'm Egyptian.
Wow.
Yeah, half Egyptian. My dad was born in Egypt and came to Australia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that they would be awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
I think it'd just be like, whoa, how did this happen?
That's the Egyptians are the epitome of crushing it and then just like, we're done. Let's get chill for a while. Have 1,000 years.
Okay, so my number one is the Northern Lights.
Gotcha. If you could only recommend one book for someone to read in their whole lifetime, what would it be?
Oh gosh, okay. So I think it's all relative to the time in my life. However, when I was in New York, I read The Great Work of Your Life. And he wrote another book called Soul Friends, which I thought was equally good. His name is Stephen, and I've totally gone blank on his last name, but The Great Work of Your Life was, for me at the time, was mind-blowing.
What did you like about it?
It talked a lot about purpose and dharma.
Gotcha.
Stephen Cope? That's it.
Gotcha.
Yep. He is a philosopher. I think it's Kripalu Yoga Center in upstate New York. Mm-hmm. I just really like the way that he writes, explains, very relatable. And of course, it's kind of from a yoga lens, really incorporating the philosophies and of yoga into his teachings. But that was a phenomenal book, I remember at the time.
Would that be the most impactful book, do you think, you've read in your life?
At the time, yes.
Gotcha. Cool. And if you could give the listeners the top 3 things they could do to create a life similar to yours.
Okay, so it would be meditate.
We're seeing a common theme.
Meditate. Rest.
Rest, but not too much rest.
But prioritize rest.
Okay. And how does that look?
Slowing the fuck down.
How does that look?
Not checking your emails.
Ever?
As the first thing you do of the morning.
Yeah.
Not checking social media
I'm pretty good
as
with
the
that.
first thing of the morning.
First hour, I don't look at my phone. Sometimes 2. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm like, morning routine.
Okay, great.
Blah, blah, blah. And then it's like midday and I've done nothing.
Rest. Like if you need to nap, take a nap. And I get that that's not always possible when you're at work, but I think prioritizing rest and creating space in your life so you're not filling every void possible with noise. So meditation, rest, and listen.
Listen.
From that space that you create through rest and meditation, you can listen.
So you can then move with purpose.
Yeah.
Nice. It's pretty fun. It's very out of pocket, but there's a rapper called Russ.
Rust?
Russ.
Oh,
R-U-S-S.
Russ. Yeah.
I really I'm a big fan of rap and hip hop, but I like listening to rappers that speak. A lot of them have really good insights about the world. J. Cole is a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
Russ is a really good one. And he's got this song that I, for a little while, just had on repeat. And it was called Let Me Put You On Game. And it was just this whole thing about him talking about like things that he's learned in his life. And if I was to answer this question myself, it would be, he says, value your time, value your health, value your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, they're pretty much the three key things.
Yeah.
Because without your health, there's nothing.
Yeah.
If you're filling your time with everything, every little thing and being pulled in all these directions, again, you feel unfulfilled. And then, your freedom, you want to be able to have a nap at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
You want to be able to go and see your family if there's a requirement to, if you need to, or you just feel like you want to, or you want but you also want to be working on things that are purposeful,
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
For sure.
Love it.
Yeah, I like that. I'll have to take a listen.
It's a really good song. Yeah, it's a really good song. So I'd be at the gym and I'd be like,
yeah.
yeah. And then the last question, what's the meaning of life?
This is like huge. What is the meaning of life? I'm going to say the meaning of life is love.
Do you know how many people say that?
Because I think it's like really at our essence is love. But also, I know you like, what's the one meaning of life?
No, you answer this. I have no.
I think it's, for us, I look at us as humans, when I say us, as spiritual beings living a human experience.
Yeah.
So understanding the human condition, understanding not just ourselves, but the human condition, but then also extending that beyond to what we can't tangibly understand.
Yeah.
Nature, spirit, all that sort of stuff, like whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I don't know.
Love and connection to what is bigger
than us. Yeah, 100%. I think that we, particularly in this day and age, we individualize things. We over-psychologize things, that we forget that there is something bigger than us that is at play here. And we've lost our connection to that bigger thing.
What do you think is at play here?
I feel like we're being tested.
By who?
Something bigger is like, you guys got to sort this shit out. Like, come on.
Interesting.
I don't know. I think what is at play is like, it's not about you. It's not about us as individuals. It's about the collective and that whatever it is. Yeah, like I said, I feel like so much of what we do is being turned into individualize, or rather than thinking about a collective experience and nature.
Cool. All right.
I don't know if that answers.
I was going to keep going, but okay. I'm like,
you can keep pushing.
We can keep going. No, it's all right. It's all right. We can leave it there for now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Pleasure.